Tonight, appeal court overturns tribunal judgment sacking Governor Doye Diri of Bayelsa State from office, dismisses 5 appeals against his election. 8 days to the Ondo State governorship election, candidates of the APC and the PDP intensify campaigns to woo voters ahead of the October 10 poll. We continue our assessment of the various sectors in the nation's life 60 years after independence, with focus on politics today. And U.S. President Donald Trump and his wife test positive for COVID-19 with mild symptoms, as former Vice President Joe Biden test results come in negative. Plus, business news and from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, former Finance Minister Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, 4 others to know fate on Tuesday next week in second round of screening for the next Director General of the World Trade Organization.
On sports news tonight, Ethiopia's Kenenisa Bekele withdraws from Sunday's London Marathon with an injury.
It's another legal hurdle successfully scaled by the Bayelsa State Governor Doye Diri, as the Court of Appeal sitting in Abuja has upturned the verdict of the Election Petition Tribunal that sacked him and ordered a fresh election. In a unanimous judgment, a 5-man panel of justices, led by Justice Adzira Gana Mshila, held that the majority verdict of the tribunal that voided Governor Diri's election was perverse and contemptuous of the law. Justice Obande Ogbunya, who read the lead judgments, held that the tribunal wrongfully evaluated the petition filed by the Advanced Nigeria Democratic Party, challenging its exclusion from the governorship election.
The legal battle over who governs Bayelsa State appears to have been settled temporarily, as the 5-man panel of the Court of Appeal affirmed the election of Senator Doye Diri as the governor of the state. The appellate court in a unanimous judgment ruled that there was enough evidence to prove that ANDP presented an underaged and unqualified candidate for the election in breach of sections 177, 182 and 189 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. The court also held that the petition filed before the tribunal was not only statute barred, but equally a pre-election matter that was outside the jurisdiction of the tribunal. Must be filed within 14 days after the cause of action arose. ANDP filed its petition at the tribunal 5 months after his deputy governorship candidate was disqualified by INEC. Lawyers to the governor of Bayelsa State and Independent National Electoral Commission applaud the verdict of the appellate court.
This judgment is so clear, is so well considered, so clinical, so analytical, so scholarly. In fact, this is a judgment that has dealt with very critical issues as to what constitutes a pre-election matter and also what constitutes valid nomination and unlawful exclusion.
The Court of Appeal has considered the petition, the appeals filed by the various appellants, particularly with respect to the appeal filed by ANDP, and has come to the conclusion that the appeals have merit and we are satisfied, and victory has been declared that INEC properly declared the governor of Bayelsa State.
The court, while dismissing 3 other appeals filed by Accord Party, Liberation Movement and Alliance for Democracy, also upheld the appeal filed by the Independent National Electoral Commission challenging the verdicts of the tribunal.
The court has declared that what the trial court did was wrong, and that the appellant, the man who said he was excluded, was not unlawfully excluded because he was not qualified to have contested the election in the first instance.
The national chairman of the ANDP vowed to challenge the judgment at the Supreme Court.
We are going to look into it and appeal against the judgment. It's not the final court.
With the verdict of the appellate court setting aside the majority judgment of the Election Petition Tribunal, the legal battle over who governs Bayelsa State may end up at the Supreme Court.
Meanwhile, Governor Diri has been reacting to the appeal court judgments reaffirming his election as governor of Bayelsa State. He's asking those fanning the embers of disunity in the state through political parties to stop and allow his government settle down to the business of development. The Bayelsa State governor, who was speaking to journalists in Government House Yenagoa, also stressed that his doors are still wide open for all to contribute to the state's growth.
Let me use this medium to acknowledge the judiciary and the Court of Appeal judges, the 5 wise men, for upholding the law. For us, it only gives us the hope that the judiciary still remains the bastion and the place where the common man can go and have justice. We do not have power. We do not control anything. We only hoped on God and hoped on the judiciary, and they have proven themselves today. I want to thank them, congratulate them, and I believe that Nigerians will applaud this judgment as sound as it is. Once again, I call on Bayelsa politicians to know when to draw the curtain.
Staying with the court, Senator Ali Ndume, who's standing as surety for a former chairman of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team, Abdulrasheed Maina, has informed the Federal High Court in Abuja that he can no longer find the defendant. Senator Ndume, who had made a legal commitment to always produce Maina in court for his trial, was responding to the judge's query about Maina's absence for the 3rd time in a row within 1 week. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is prosecuting Maina on 12 counts of money laundering involving about 2 billion naira. The trial judge, Justice Okunabang, adjourned the matter until October 5th with an order that the surety must produce the defendant in court on that day. From the courts to politics, the Ondo State governor has condemned the violence in Owo and Ikpele, describing it as a calculated move to scare away voters. He adds that the feelers he gets from that is that his opponents are jittery. He was speaking during a rally at Akoko Southeast local government area of the state.
Artisans and members of the business community in Owo local government area gather to receive Governor Rotimi Akeredolu, who is from the area, as he continues his re-election campaign. The governor seizes the occasion to ask them to be more resolute ahead of the election, in spite of the violence recorded in some parts of Owo and Ikpele.
We cannot be afraid, so please encourage yourselves. If it warrants it, more security operatives will be deployed. They are making trouble to frighten you because they are jittery of our victory.
Governor Akeredolu's next stop is Akoko Southeast local government area for a meeting with traditional rulers across the council area. The traditional rulers explain why they have all decided to support his re-election bid.
Your Excellency, we are grateful for what you have done, both in Ishua and in Akoko as a whole. Are we going to talk about the infrastructure development, which cuts across the whole local government?
During my last campaign, I promised to construct a dual carriage road at Ikare, and it's a promise fulfilled.
The campaign train also defies the rain as it moves to Ishua, where residents of the community and the entire Akoko Southeast are waiting. They in turn promised to deliver all the votes on the council to him, while Governor Akeredolu renews his pledge to continue to serve them. The APC's governorship candidate is promising more developmental projects if re-elected, not just within Akoko land, but across Ondo State.
Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party in Ondo State said it will work for the development of the state and also ensure all funds allocated to the local governments are used to fund them. The state governorship candidate of the PDP, Eyitayo Jegede, gave this promise, among others, during his campaign tour of Ifedore local government area.
As the governorship election in Ondo State draws closer, the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Eyitayo Jegede, is still on tour of the towns and villages in the state to canvass for votes in the electorate. This time, the team is in Ifedore local government area in the Central Senatorial District, and the goal is to visit every town and village. Residents are confident that their votes will count.
What you're talking about Ikubensi, I wouldn't know. They can't be Ikuben, maybe in the state house. But outside there, people are tired. And our vote is going to speak for us.
The tour extends late into the night, but that didn't stop supporters from trooping out to show solidarity.
While I was in 100 level, 200, 300 level, I paid 30,000 as my tuition fee in Adekunle Ajayi University. But when the present government got there and he said 30,000 cannot buy his own pair of shoe. So from 30,000 naira, the school fee was increased to 150,000 naira. That is why we are here today. The Modern Child Hospital in Ondo State is dead.
Eyitayo Jegede once again promises an all-round development that will be beneficial to all if elected.
Everywhere we went to, we were welcome. Not just proud. The truth of it is that, I've said several times, we are far, far more than there. We are more than there, far, far more than there. The people are ready for us and we will not disappoint them. We will work, we will bring development to the states, and we will ensure that our youths have jobs to do. The farmers will smile, so also about the women. The traders will have money to trade because we have a special package for them.
The governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party says with the warm reception he's received from all communities in the Ifedore local government area, he is optimistic that the people will vote massively for him come October 10.
Ahead of the Ondo State governorship election on October 10th, the Inspector General of Police has ordered security aides not to accompany VIPs or political appointees on the day of the poll. Mr. Mohammed Adamu wants that severe punishments will be meted out to anyone who violates the order. This is contained in a statement from the Force Public Relations Officer, Mr. Frank Mba, who notes that the officers and men of the force, as well as personnel of other security agencies deployed for the election, have also been charged to conduct themselves professionally. The IGP has also deployed the Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of research and planning, Mr. Adeleye Oyebade, to administer the general security arrangements for the election in the state. Elsewhere, some leaders of the People's Democratic Party, led by its national chairman, Uche Secondus, today converged on the Bauchi state capital for a meeting with Governor Bala Mohammed. Members of the delegation include a former Senate President, David Mark, Governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Tambuwal, former Governor of Gombe State, Ibrahim Dankwabo, PDP Deputy National Chairman, Nazif Gamawa, among others. The meeting, which held behind closed doors, lasted about 2 hours. Shortly after, Mrs. Secondus told journalists that their discussions were centered around internal issues that he will not speak to the press about.
The first one has to do with the candidates. This party is very democratic. There is no room for discrimination. Everyone is qualified, both young and old, governors, non-governors, is qualified to contest. And we have the space for everyone. If you win, you'll become our candidate. So it's open to everybody. Is that clear?
In part two, after the break, former military president Ibrahim Babangida applauds role of the armed forces in laying the foundation for the country's democracy. Join us again. Welcome back. If it has joined us to watch the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos, a reminder of our top stories. Appeal Court overturns tribunal judgment sacking Governor Doye Diri of Bayelsa State from office, dismisses 5 appeals against his election. 8 days to the Ondo State governorship election, candidates of the APC and the PDP intensify campaign to woo voters ahead of the October poll. We continue our assessment of the various sectors in the nation's life 60 years after independence, with focus on politics today. And U.S. President Donald Trump and his wife test positive for COVID-19 with mild symptoms as former Vice President Joe Biden's test result returns negative. Last business sports are later from our studios in London. Returning away from politics, President Muhammadu Buhari has warned that trafficking in nuclear materials remains a potential threat to international peace and security, while calling for the total elimination of nuclear weapons. In his virtual address to the UN high-level meeting to commemorate and promote the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons, the president restated Nigeria's commitment to the peaceful use of nuclear energy. But he expresses concern about the slow pace with which states possessing nuclear weapons are disarming and decommissioning their existing nuclear facilities. Meanwhile, the president has also signed the Doha Amendments of the Kyoto Protocol to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The Minister of Environment, Dr. Muhammad Abubakar, who briefed reporters on the development, explains that by signing the amendments, Nigeria has become the 144th country out of 192 to ratify protocol, which ends today, October 2nd, 2020. He says Nigeria is the last country to sign the deal, which comes into force December 31st, 2020. The Police Service Commission has stood down the promotion of 112 senior police officers, even as it orders the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, to provide the presidential approval on the creation of new zonal commands. Following its 9th plenary meeting in Abuja, presided over by its chairman, Musliu Smith, the PSC says the affected officers drawn from the new commands will not be promoted until the IGP provides the presidential authorization. The decisions were expected to be conveyed to the police boss on Monday for implementation. The Commission has, however, approved the promotion of 175 senior police officers, including Assistant Inspectors General of Police, Assistant Inspector General of Police, Sanusi Lemu, who is promoted to Deputy Inspector General of Police, representing the North Central. And as Nigeria marks its 60th independence anniversary, contrary to the view in some quarters, the military's incursion into governance may have been beneficial to the country. That defense of the military's role comes from former military president, retired General Ibrahim Babangida. He told Channels Television's Ladi Akeredolu on our current affairs program, Newsnight, that many of the building blocks of today's Nigeria were laid by military administrations.
No, we didn't create problems. We tried to provide the framework upon which subsequent governments or subsequent people who are going to come after it could build upon. Like you earlier said, most of the infrastructural developments, even the democracy, we midwifed it. So development, democracy, free market economy, we started all these things. So this is the end thing. We were able to capture what the world is doing now and to try to bring it into our own country. And we are the politicians, the civilians are the best people in handling these things. So we lay the solid foundation for that.
And in continuation of our assessment of Nigeria's independence and the significance of the last 60 years, we focus tonight on our politics. The problems are, of course, numerous, and so are the potentials. In this next report, our political correspondent, Seun Okinbaloye, highlights some of the nation's major challenges and the conversation on the way forward, especially as it touches on leadership recruitment process and grey areas in the political structure.
How do you describe the life of a 60-year-old who, before turning 7, has had a major crisis? A forceful removal of government by the military. Months later, a major disaster, a civil war, an internal strife which lasted for 3 years. No doubt, Nigeria has had a terrifying childhood, rough teenage, and a very troubling adulthood. 60 years, 4 republics, half of the 6 decades spent under military rule. The military interregnum and leadership crisis has raised a national question. Even more worrying is the state of our federal structure.
On the basis of that federal constitution, that we became independent, and it worked very well for us. But unfortunately, some people, the military in 1966, changed it, reverted to a unitary constitution. And that's why things have not worked since then.
The problem has nothing to do with the structure of government. The problem is that of governance.
The nation has had a series of constitutional conferences. Efforts at amending the constitution has been numerous.
A constitution that lawyers call autochthonous, not autochthonous. In other words, it has no validity. It doesn't derive from the people. We did not vote for it. There was no plebiscite for it. It was not done by elected representatives of the people. And yet, it remains the ground norm.
The clamor for restructuring has been rife. The ruling APC says they will attempt at fixing the problem. President Buhari even recently recognized the problem.
True federalism is necessary at this juncture.
Restructuring now or no peace in Nigeria.
I believe that the solutions to most of the problems we face today lie in a honest assessment of the recommendations of the 2014 National Conference.
But indeed, what are the issues at the heart of the problem?
If we devolve powers to the states and we shrink the exclusive legislative list and send these things back to the residual list, not even the concurrent, but the residual list.
60 years and over 20 years of unbroken democratic rule. Yet, one of our major strengths, diversity, appears to be a trouble. Where do we go from here?
Always the division. But we must be able to manage this tension between what unites and what divides if we are to see as a nation.
We can use the judiciary as the final arbiter to redefine the misdirection of our politics.
Some political scientists have said, we know our problems too well. Fixing it is our problem. Perhaps what they call the political will. Seun Okinbaloye, Channels Television News.
To take a further look at some of the issues raised in the report and perhaps helping to beam light on areas of solutions, I'm being joined on the News at 10 now by Professor of Strategy and Development and the Director of Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies, Professor Anthony Killer, is here with me in the studio. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
On the News at 10.
Yes.
So I see that the constitutional framework has been a recurring conversation, yes, especially in Nigeria. And 60 years on, we're still talking about it. We still refer to the 1999 Constitution. We've talked about constitutional reform and restructuring. Why is this such a problem that's so difficult to surmount?
Well, it's such a problem because it's created on a false premises. If you have a decree and you call it a constitution, sooner or later it will generate problem. The reason why constitution has to have plebiscite, has to be deliberated and agreed, is not just because you want to get people together. It is because when people get together, they will talk about their concerns, their fears, and their hope. And all those things will come together to form an agreement. So if you foster a constitution on people, or decree, and you call it a constitution, there will be a problem. And also there is problem because the first 2 sentences, the first 2 words in the constitution says, we the people, the first 3. And that is not true. So you cannot build something good on something that is weak or false.
And how can we overcome this?
Well, I think we need to embrace reality. We need to understand that, for example, we are a union of nations. We are diverse, we're different. And rather than try to put aside our differences, we need to understand them, then work out how we can live together in a civil way, in a framework of law, an agreement between two free people.
And the constitutional conferences we've had before have not done that?
Well, they have done it in theory, but they've not been implemented. I don't understand why somebody who has lived in this country, like President Buhari and those around him, who saw the process of the Constitution, have decided not to at least talk about what happened in that Constitution. You know, they either say, I have read it, I hate it, or they say, I've seen it, let us try to implement it, not to pretend as if it's not there. That's a very terrible thing to do.
So we do have a diverse and ethnic cultural orientation here in this country as a people, which is also reflected in our politics.
Yes.
And, you know, different groups pulling at the sides, at the seams of Nigeria, wanting to burst out. Going forward, how best can we handle diversity?
Well, I think the best way to handle is to embrace it. You know, the best countries in the world are the ones that understand diversity and then try to work with it. There's no point forcing people to be one. 60 years of trying to do a Nigerian one nation has clearly failed. Maybe it's time for us to look at it and say, oh, actually, we're not one nation. We are a group of nations. How will these nations live together? Will it be one passport or 20 passports?
How can we apply that, especially in the leadership recruitment process?
Well, there's nothing impossible. I mean, the social contracts in life, they're not mountains. You know, monuments are social constructs. You decide how you want to live together. It is not difficult at all. So, I mean, how do we apply it? We simply apply it by saying, do we want a loose confederation? Do we want a very federal state? Or do we want a unitary state? We decide. So far, we have tried a false federal system, a unitary system called federal, that has not worked. It has generated mistrust, underdevelopment, nepotism, clannishness, and doubts.
Well, it sounds like a recurring conversation to me. Thanks again, Professor Anthony Killer. Appreciate you all being here.
Thank you for having me.
When the News at 10 returns, former Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, 4 others to know fate on next Tuesday in second round of screening for the next Director General of the World Trade Organization. We'll have that on Business News. Join us again. Welcome back. Young Nigerians have been asked to invest in science and bridge the existing digital skills gap so that they can benefit from the array of employment opportunities that exist across the globe. This appeal comes from the Minister of Sports and Youth Development, Mr. Sunday Dare, at an event organized by the I Choose Life Foundation to celebrate Nigerian youth who have made the country proud. A book in memory of the late helicopter combat pilot, Tolulope Arotile, was also presented by the Chief of Air Staff.
After 60 years of independence, many believe that Nigeria is yet to achieve all its dreams. This view also resonates with many young people in this hall, though the focus of this meeting is to have a conversation around the type of country that many young people want to see Nigeria become.
I dream of a Nigeria where our leaders are looking at other standards in other countries and dreaming that Nigeria can become like them. I dream of a Nigeria where adults listen to our solutions to the different problems that we have.
Many participants here acknowledge the critical role of digitization in achieving some of the dreams for Nigeria, but highlight the challenges they face.
How do you tell a young person or a young graduate coming out of school that you need collateral to access a loan of about 3 million, 2 million? Where is he going to get the money from?
One of the critical challenges we face is still the lack of quality talent. So yes, there are a lot of people at entry level who have some level of understanding, but not a lot of quality talent.
The chief host stresses the importance of investing in science to bridge the existing digital gap in the country, just as he urges young people to take advantage of existing government interventions.
There's a digital skills gap, not just in Nigeria, but on the African continent. I think it's important that the youth apply themselves to the opportunities that exist.
The high point of this event is the official presentation of the Heroes book series called Mom, I Can Fly, in honor of a late combat helicopter pilot Tolulope Arotile.
It is our hope that this comic series will encourage young Nigerians to make choices that will benefit them, their family, and the nation. It will especially do a lot of good for the girl child, who, like Arotile, will be motivated to study, work hard, and unreservedly pursue their dreams and legitimate aspirations.
With an estimated 42.5% youth population, it is safe to say that investment in this category of people is an investment for the future of Nigeria.
And now some heartwarming news for all Unity schools in the country, as the federal government has ordered their reopening from Monday, October 12th. The Minister of Education, Adamu, says the decision to reopen the schools is due to the fact that the COVID-19 curve has been flattened. He explains that the schools across the country are at liberty to fix resumption dates with adequate safety measures in place, but cautions the school owners who fail to comply with safety standards risk closure. A bank robbery that took place today in Iyekiti town in Ekiti State has been confirmed by the State Police Command. The Police Public Relations Officer, Mr. Sunday Abutu, who spoke to Channels Television via a phone call, says no casualty was recorded in the attack that began towards the bank's closing hours. He adds that the police team is still trailing the robbery gang. According to eyewitnesses, the robbers, numbering about 10, carted away large sums of money after blowing up the security door to gain access. The robbery is said to have lasted about at least 40 minutes without any interruption. In other news, the governor of Kwara State, Abdurrahman Abdulrazak, has made a very strong case for mainstreaming gender inclusion in governance. Leading other panelists at the first virtual Kwara State Gender Conference in Ilorin, the state capital, Governor Abdulrazak believes doing that will serve as a catalyst for all-inclusive growth.
So there is still...
Kwara State is actively taking the lead in the campaign for gender inclusion because we are convinced that a society works better and grows faster when no one is denied equal opportunities to succeed. And we have no regret pushing this noble agenda. We have appointed 56% female cabinet in Kwara State and ensured that around 50% of our permanent secretaries in the civil service are qualified women. Similarly, top government positions across the MDAs are held by very accomplished women, and we're looking forward to assisting our women to take a noble cause in their elective offices. Working on gender equity also means providing opportunities for improving livelihood for women. As much as over 70% of beneficiaries of our microcredit scheme, loans of course, under the social investment program are women.
In her contribution, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Mrs. Amina Mohammed, insists women empowerment should go beyond mere sloganeering, to include reforms that give women a voice of their own.
It has been 25 years since Nigerian women joined other women delegates in Beijing to demand gender equality. We must be ready to support the next generation of young women and girls in the areas of education and entrepreneurship. Educated and financially independent women make for stronger, more resilient communities. This is especially important as we look to bolster the economy in the post-COVID-19 recovery process. Kwara's young women are innovating everything from technology hubs and cosmetic brands to catering businesses and social enterprise. They are today and tomorrow's leaders. I urge all of us to stand behind them in realizing their potential, free from fear of violence and with full confidence in their abilities. The United Nations is committed to supporting the efforts of Nigeria in this regard.
The federal government has launched the Stream 1 of the Artisan and Transport Support Scheme to provide a 30,000 naira operational grant to individual small business owners enrolled in the scheme. This is aimed at reducing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their incomes. According to the Minister of State for Trade and Investment, 9,009 beneficiaries have registered from 36 states and the FCT.
The Minister of State for Trade, Commerce and Investment arrives at the venue of the launch of the Artisans and Transport Support Scheme, along with the Special Assistant to the President on Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises in Abuja. The purpose is to kickstart the process that should ease the pains for those whose economy has been hardest hit by the pandemic.
I have to re-emphasize, this is absolutely free. There is no payment to be made, no forms to be filled. You either go through your association, or if you do not belong to an association, we've made a small percentage available for those artisans who are just members of the public.
Once you give your name to associations, the association leaders will forward those names or give those names to the enumerators. Your own business is to have a BVN. We will not deal with you if you don't have a BVN. We will not deal with you, if possible, if you don't have a bank account.
This is Stream 1 of the scheme, launched simultaneously in Lagos. It is to cover 10 states, including Kaduna, Delta and the Federal Capital Territory.
We want to be able to support a tailor who was not able to do any work for months because of the lockdown. We want to be able to support the shoemaker, whatever your trade is.
Now, under this scheme also, the government wants to ensure that women get their fair share. So for what we have for each state, 45% will go to women. And then there is 5% reserved in every state for those with special needs.
The Artisans and Transport Support Scheme is part of the federal government economic sustainability scheme launched in July this year. The intended beneficiaries applaud the program.
I will make sure I mobilize all our remaining members through the certificate of Corporate Affairs Commission.
As we are here today, we will take the message to the grassroots.
We thank Federal for remembering us for the pandemic.
The outbreak of the COVID-19 affected the economy generally, but it's believed that the micro, small and medium enterprises subsector of the economy is hardest hit. The government believes that this scheme and others like it will help to ease the pangs on the economy.
Yes, Tediola now with the day's major business stories.
Thanks, Amarachi. Welcome to Business News. The race for the job of Director General of the World Trade Organization is reaching an advanced stage as Nigeria's former Finance Minister, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and 4 other candidates will know their fate in the next round of screening on October the 6th. Last month, Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala, alongside her 4 counterparts, were selected from a pool of 8 to the second round of elimination process. WTO's 164 members will make their 2 best choices as the 25-year-old trade body plans to select a winner by early next month. Greenwich Trust Limited has officially kicked off operation as a merchant bank after the Central Bank of Nigeria approved its upscaling and licensing to offer more services in the financial market. At the official flag-off in Lagos today, the bank's executive director, Benson Ogundeji, says that becoming the 6th merchant bank in the country, the bank will offer increased value to its customers and stakeholders.
Greenwich Merchants Bank Limited officially flags off its operation in Lagos. And to celebrate this feat, some notable Nigerians and friends of the Greenwich Merchants Bank gathered here while others joined virtually.
The next phase of growth promises to be even more exciting as we start planting the seeds of being a full-service financial platform and financial powerhouse in Nigeria and beyond. The key focus will be on, one, building a local bank that meets international standards in customer service, professionalism, and ethics, which we intend to scale up over the next few years.
Recently, the Central Bank of Nigeria granted Greenwich Trust Limited operational license to operate as a merchant bank.
This will show the public that the organization is well established with staffing, infrastructure, and the board structure.
So why should you bank with us is because we're bringing a new perspective to this business.
The license allows the bank to upscale its operation to include services such as corporate banking, investment banking, financial advisory services, security dealings, asset management, and more.
What it means is that we are moving, bringing the money market side of the banking business and treasury operations, money market and treasury, to the existing investment banking franchise.
Although its operation as a merchant bank starts today, it's not new in the financial sector.
It's a financial firm that started operation 26 years ago with operation covering stockbroking, asset management, trustees. Then at a later point, we acquired the registrar department of Union Bank, Union Registrar, so we rechristened a GRD as Greenwich Registrar.
Greenwich Merchant Bank believes its launch into the wholesale banking space will provide increased value to stakeholders beyond its previous scope.
Nigeria's local bourse began the first trading day in October on a positive note as Ikeja Hotel led 19 gainers despite the lower activity level in Friday's equities market. Temple Ashaju gives us details of today's trading.
Thank you for joining us on the Stock Market Report. The domestic stock market maintains its bullish run for the week, seemingly giving investors a deserving 60th independence anniversary gift and indicating a strong start to October via capital appreciation in bellwether stocks. Today's performance of 57 basis points adds to the benchmark index, which expands the week-to-date records to 2.53%, while also shifting the year-to-date status from negative to a positive position of 0.54%. And for the third consecutive session, Zenith Bank leads the market by volume and value, single-handedly accounting for around 50% of the total market turnover today. Banking stocks remain the most patronized segment of the market despite Ikeja Hotels trading on bid after the reopening of its flagship suite, Sheraton Hotels. Now, while investors keep their eyes on the third quarter earnings for next week, President Muhammadu Buhari's proposed 13.08 trillion naira budget 2021 will be deemed the playbook for the weekend. And that's your stock market report. I'm Temple Ashaju.
And that's business news tonight. It's back to Amarachi for the rest of the news at 10.
Thanks a lot, Teniola. And on the foreign scene, U.S. President Donald Trump has been taken to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center less than 24 hours after testing positive for coronavirus. Mr. Trump began exhibiting mild symptoms of COVID-19 on Thursday after disclosing that he and his wife had gone into quarantine late on Wednesday. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. US President Donald Trump has announced he and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for coronavirus and are now self-isolating. Mr. Trump, aged 74 and therefore in a high-risk group, wrote on Twitter, "We will get through this together." It comes after Hope Hicks, one of his closest aides, tested positive.
As all of you know, the President and the First Lady tested positive for COVID-19. They remain in good spirits. The president does have mild symptoms, and as we look to try to make sure that not only his health and safety and welfare is good, we continue to look at that for all of the American people.
Mr. Trump's announcement comes just over a month before the presidential election on the 3rd of November, where he faces Democratic challenger Joe Biden. During last Tuesday's debate, some of Mr. Trump's family members were seen not wearing masks.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
Mr. Trump has mostly spurned mask wearing and has often been pictured not socially distancing with aides or others during official engagements. The president has long tried to put the virus behind him and encourage Americans to resume normal activity, promising to deliver a vaccine soon.
We are on track to develop and distribute a vaccine before the end of the year, and maybe substantially before.
However, he has been unable to keep the pandemic off the election agenda, with cases now rising again in half of the 50 states and more than 200,000 deaths. His positive test provokes a series of questions about the conduct of the rest of the campaign. There are concerns for the health of Joe Biden, who is 77 years old, and debated Mr. Trump when he may have been carrying the virus, although the pair did not shake hands and maintained social distancing. European Union leaders have broken a diplomatic deadlock to impose sanctions on Belarus after reassuring the Republic of Cyprus that the bloc would also punish Turkey if it continued to drill in the Mediterranean.
Not made similar constructive gestures.
The deal, hammered out after hours of negotiations, will impose sanctions on about 40 officials accused of rigging August's presidential elections in Belarus. However, the country's president, Alexander Lukashenko, is not among those singled out. Cyprus had blocked action against Belarus for a month, insisting that sanctions also be imposed on Turkey, which has stepped up oil and gas exploration. Meanwhile, Amnesty International has stopped its work in India, saying the government had frozen its bank accounts in the latest action against it for speaking out about rights violations. The human rights group said it had laid off staff after facing a crackdown over the past 2 years over allegations of financial wrongdoing that it said were baseless. The group had highlighted rights violations in recent months, as well as what it said was a lack of police accountability during riots in Delhi in February. Guatemala's president has condemned a group of migrants that stormed through the country's border as violent, vowing to stop the group from crossing through the country en route to the USA. Migrants began gathering near the border at 6:30 in the morning, and by midday more than 3,000 migrants had crossed illegally. That's according to Guatemalan officials. The caravan is the biggest since the coronavirus pandemic hit Central America in March, shutting off travel as well as triggering a rise in unemployment and poverty. Hundreds of Catalonia pro-independence protesters have demonstrated in Barcelona to mark the 3rd anniversary of the region's failed declaration of independence from Spain. Protesters gathered in front of the regional government building, holding a banner reading "Not a Step Back" in Catalan, and cheering in support of independence. A small group of hooded protesters moved to Catalonia Square, where they set trash containers alight. Catalonia's 7.5 million people are split over independence, with the latest opinion poll showing 42% in favour and 50% against. And finally, Germany's largest power producer has said it's received 45 bids for one of its giant bucket wheel excavators that it put up for sale in an online auction earlier this year.
Mit einem Gewicht von 4.000 Tonnen.
The 3,500-ton Bagger 275 is the smallest of the 22-strong excavator fleet and has enough capacity to fill 24 Olympic-sized swimming pools. RWE, which is preparing for a coal-free future, is now reviewing the bids and whether potential buyers will take on the dismantling and the transportation of the huge wheel. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
In the meantime, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, who debated President Trump on Tuesday night, has announced he and his wife have tested negative for the coronavirus. President Muhammadu Buhari has joined other world leaders in wishing U.S. President Donald Trump and his wife Melania a quick and full recovery after they reportedly tested positive for the coronavirus. A statement from the presidency says President Buhari notes with sympathy that the incident of COVID-19 in the White House manifests the challenge posed by the pandemic across the world and difficulty in containing the spread. While wishing the American First family speedy turnaround in their health status, President Buhari urges more compliance among Nigerians to protocols and adherence to advice of medical doctors.
Time now for some sports news. Ethiopia's Kenenisa Bekele has withdrawn from Sunday's London Marathon with an injury, robbing an athletic-starved audience of a showdown with Kenyan world record holder Eliud Kipchoge. The 38-year-old, who has won a staggering 26 gold medals on the world, Olympic and continental stages, says he had been undergoing daily treatment. Last year's quarterfinals, where she had no such issues with the American teenager this time around, as she claimed a comprehensive 54-minute victory. And that's sports news.
And the main news again. The Court of Appeal today, sitting in Abuja, overturned the judgment of the Electoral Petitions Tribunal, sacking Bayelsa State Governor Doye Diri from office. The court also dismissed 5 other appeals against his election. Also today, candidates of the APC and the PDP for the Ondo State governorship election intensified campaigns to woo voters ahead of the October poll. That's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.